Hello, this is Dave Hearn with the Photo Geezers, along with partner in crime, Dick Yarmy. Hello there, Dick.
Hello there. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
So we're good. This is episode 4 of the Photo Geezers, and I think I'm going to go right in and share my screen, and we'll begin to have some comments on some of the recent submissions we've had from the club. I want to start out before we get into the pictures. This was actually done by John Snell, borrowing Sue Smith's camera. And just by way of edification, it doesn't matter who owns the camera, it's who snaps the picture that has the copyright. So John Snell has the copyright on this picture. Edith Jenkins turned 100 a little over a week ago, and she lives in the same cluster with Albert Spirith and James Adelot. In fact, I think she's James Adelot's neighbor. 100 years old, living independently. And so her neighbors got together and with proper distancing wished her 100th birthday. So you're very likely to see another picture of this on highlights this month. So with that, I'm going to go into the pictures we submitted this time. And I think, Dick, you're going to make a few comments here on the very first series here from Sam Maynard.
Yeah, the Sam Maynard's pictures. The assignment this time was to work a subject. And this is a really excellent example. And it also has a tendency to tell a story, because as we get closer, as Sam worked this subject, and then the appearance in the last picture of the cruise ship almost makes another different story. To me, it had sort of a Huckleberry Finn look to it. But if you look at how Sam, it appears to me, she first observed the scene, and then as she began to work it, as we say, she started to move around and take a different view. And each time doing a great job of positioning the main subject, the three children on a rock, in a normal visual flow through the composition. Then moving on again, she got even closer. Again, beautiful cross lighting where the kids are not silhouetted. I call it kind of semi-silhouette when you get the cross lighting on the back to give them definition. Just really a good looking picture. And then the final picture when she introduced yet another story element, which is the cruise ship. And you could write all sorts of captions and thoughts about this, with the three children looking on at the people who are on a different social strata than they are as they cruise the area. But I just thought it was an excellent job of working a subject and telling a story.
I think these were all at Bar Harbor, Maine, or in that vicinity. So
yeah, I think they were. I think there was a caption on the first one, if I remember, that said Bar Harbor.
One other thing I was going to comment on was on the first one. Dick and I have been having a discussion this week about landscapes and the elements of a landscape. And one of the things that you're looking for is a foreground. We have foreground elements, and then you start getting middle ground with the rock and the water, and then the background. So when you do landscapes, whether you have people in them or not, you also should be thinking about foreground, midground, background, and carrying people through the picture.
Yeah, this does a good job of that too.
Yeah.
And this is Ernie Jenke, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And this is a wonderful storytelling. And maybe if you could pop up all three of them for a second, and then we go back to each one. If you could show a screen that shows all three at one time, because there it is. Dave had suggested an incredible good idea would be to turn this picture into a triptych, either by buying window frames at Michaels and framing them this way, or you could actually print it this way if you wanted to. But first of all, Ernie's diligence in coming back 3 days in a row, if it was 3 days or even more, but showing this story of the development of these birds of the nest, and then they finally have taken their flight. Just a great job of, yes, working a subject, but also telling a story. Just really nice pictures. And each one of them is well composed, well exposed. Just a great job. Do you have any thoughts on these pictures, David?
Well, the only other thought that I was going to add, I did check his data on it, and from the fairly newly hatched babes to the empty nest, the time frame on this is only 10 days, which I find kind of phenomenal. So,
if only our kids had grown up that quickly.
Well, imagine how many worms or whatever that Mama and Papa had to keep bringing to these things and get them to that point.
Well, maybe Ernie helped. Maybe Ernie brought some worms.
That's true. And to your point, I think the idea of taking photos like this was great, but then also this is something that I urged him to seriously consider, printing them, framing them up as triptych, and putting them on the wall. It's a nice story.
Very nice story. Another good example of, both watching the progression of a story, but also finding, as you work the subject, that using all four of the pictures, again, displayed this way, gives it a totally different look. And it's, to me, really nice. Is this a Tosha? I can't remember.
Oh, this is Susan Murdy.
Susan Murdy. It's really nice shots of the geese.
And in this particular case, Susan actually did the composite. So I'm assuming she did that inside her Samsung smartphone, which is, again, it's a nice skill that she's developing to be able to do a composite like that.
It certainly is. And if she wants to go back and see these geese today, they're about 2/3 as large. They're getting close to almost looking like their parents.
Again, it's amazing how fast these birds grow.
Oh. Now, this one, to me, was an incredible example of where, after the fact, you can work the subject. This is a good picture as it is. And yet, now, was this a Tosha?
This is a Tosha, yes.
Yeah, and then in looking at this picture, and I think the term Dave used last week in talking about this is find the picture within the picture. And then you can see here what Tosha did, changing it to a vertical and getting this great connection between the two subjects, bringing it up close, makes it an incredibly good photograph. And she really looked at the composition rules when she did this cropping. You get this great triangle between the tree, the subject, and the ducklings, and capturing the sweet smile that that lady has every time I've ever seen her.
That's Nada Barnett.
Nada Barnett, just great capture. I love the one leg off the ground on the one duck.
The only thing,
gooselet, I guess.
Yeah. Thing I would add too is that normally I think we would always encourage people to, in working the subject, to get in closer and take a picture. Obviously, there's times when you just simply can't do it because these geese are not going to cooperate for you at all. So you take the picture, then find what other picture you have in there. So you can't always do it at the time when you got moving subjects.
They're great. Just made another picture out of a picture, which is really great.
This is Frank Saps, and I'm not sure whether he shot this in Japan or U.S. It actually, to me, could easily be somewhere on a lake here in western North Carolina. It's a very nice landscape, and in keeping with the earlier remarks, what we have here, and when you're thinking about landscape, again, look at having a foreground, a midground, and background. and something that takes you through the picture. So these silhouetted trees make a nice anchor, plus a little bit of a frame around the mountains. And then you have the midground of the lake and the close-in mountains, and taking you all the way. And of course, eventually your eyes are going to go up into that beautiful sky. So it's an example of how in a landscape you begin to look at your composition and finding the elements that help you take your eye through the picture.
Well, also the ability to get a twofer out of the foreground. You know, it's the foreground and yet it's also the frame,
Right.
Which, you know, to me, really gets you bang for your buck when you can do that. Lovely tones in this. The subdued tones really work.
This is a Rock Ward picture, and this is an excellent example of what I have said on many occasions, that the moon is so bright because it's reflected sunlight that on a normal dark night, if you expose to get moon and get details in the moon like we have here, then you end up making everything else black. But if you shoot at full moon rise or full moon set, sunrise and sunset is always 180 degrees and within an hour or so of the moonrise and moonset. So you actually have sunlight illuminating the sky and the foreground trees at the same time he could expose for the moon, and you can even see some nice detail in the moon. So it's another example of when you could shoot and get moon and some foreground and background elements. This is a Marion Ward shot. Dick, you had a couple comments on this one?
Well, again, something you have preached incessantly and correctly so, which is how much detail and wonderful color you can get out of light flowers, white, yellow flowers, etc., when they're backlit. They don't blow out like yellow tends to do in hot sun, and white also, of course. And yet you get the texture and detail through the petals. And it also allows to balance that exposure with the background, with the green and blue in the midground and the blue in the background. Just really makes the picture, to me, interesting and makes it pop.
And to your point, the color composition in this with yellow, green, and blue, those are all being analogous colors. It's the color scheme is harmonious in this.
Yeah. This is a Sioux junkie, I believe, and the thing that got my attention on this was the ability to get a really nice looking picture of vegetation in hot sun, which is really hard to do. And what Sioux has done here by keeping the dark leaves and background dark and a minimal, probably half a stop or a stop down on the main subject, turned this into kind of a graphic. And she's got the repetitive shapes from the lower corner to the middle, and turns what could have been average into a very good picture. Just nicely done and nicely composed.
And the other thing that I would add, whoops, sorry about that, is when you look at a picture like this, the one thing you want to be very careful of is the edges and leaving some space to where you don't have these tips. What's nice about this is the tips of this plant aren't touching the edge. So to have them touch or be cut off can make the difference between an okay shot and a good shot.
Just very carefully composed.
Yeah. I'm going to give a shout out to Horace. About a week and a half ago, Horace, I put a picture up, and Horace wanted to know how you got these backgrounds that are kind of non-existent, and I did kind of wrote back a tutorial to him. Unfortunately, either with a smartphone or even like with a point and shoot, you have some serious disadvantages that prevent you from really blurring out a background. What Horace finally figured out is that if he can shoot with some light on a subject and then have a dark background, and I actually went and opened up this exposure on this, and you can see that's not a black cloth. It's actually, it may be his deck. I'm not sure. So it's a really good example of taking a point and shoot camera and getting a really nice isolated flower shot by careful planning and positioning. Dick,
Yes, yeah, and he managed to retain the color in the midground too. You know, the surrounding buds. It just, yeah, really clever use of exposure to get the effect that he wanted.
This is George Leroy, and both Horace and George, I give a shout out to them for really kind of pushing on taking their flower pictures to a different point. This case, George actually did put a black background. I think he shot outside in natural light, but put a black background behind this, I think it's a flame azalea, and has very nice sharp focus. You see all the water drops on the front, so it's very pretty shot, and appreciate the fact that people are advancing their skill levels.
Exponentially, I think.
Hmm?
I think exponentially people are expanding. You know, every week the photographs get so it just blows me away about how good they are getting. You know, it's just people are really working at this craft, and maybe because we don't have anything else to do. But I see an awful lot of really nice photographs, which is a lot of fun to look at.
And speaking of
Fun.
skills, on this I need to have Buzz tell me that is not a picture of him when he was younger. I think it is. It certainly looks like him, but this is where he took the idea of a double exposure, and I think he calls this personal mail. But, I just really liked what he did on this, and the nice exploration of the new skill.
Yeah, and a very different application than other people have been using.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he's actually made a photo composite by using a double exposure, and it's plus the whimsical nature of it. It just makes it fun to look at. Mm.
And I'll let you jump in there on this one. This is Sydney Wilson.
I just, when you look at the slideshow that gets posted this week and see the entire collection of Sydney Wilson this week, they're all kind of breathtaking. But because of the subtlety of color and the color palette in this one, I think is why Dave chose it. It's one of many that are just an unbelievable use of the iPhone and Snapseed. She's doing things with this that people aren't doing with $5,000 Nikons and Photoshop. Just a beautifully thought out work and then executed. And they're all should be framed and hung.
Yeah. And in this particular case, this is at least a composite of 3 pictures, if not more. Because the iris itself has been repeated underneath, and then the blue background. I don't know where it's a single photo or 2, but and as Dick said, the color, the yellow and blue, obviously complementary color, but having them this really nice, more subtle shades. It's gorgeous picture, I think.
Well, I think Sydney's artistic ability made her not literally define double exposure. She's decided she'll use as many exposures as she needs to execute what's in her mind. And this is a great example of it. As you say, at least triple and maybe more. She'll probably, maybe she'll tell us.
This is a Dave Barstow, and the next couple of pictures are going to be window light. We've had some nice window light pictures by a lot of different people, but again, in this particular case, you have the window light coming in, nice backlight on the flowers, and Dick was commenting about the light striking the vase itself and getting some nice depth and perspective in the vase.
Yeah, it's just, it's an interesting, it's a cross backlighting, and he's managed to hold both the highlights and the shadows to an area that make it very pleasant to look at. And as I say, it really makes the vase very three-dimensional, which often when you put glassware in front of a window, it kind of flattens out.
This is Dick's picture, in terms of working a subject, and those of you who have managed to get on Flickr and get into the GHF 64 group, I forget, you have at least a half dozen pictures in there?
Yeah, at least. Once I get started, it's hard to stop.
So he was really working this. I happened to latch onto this one because I love the line study that's in this. It's also a little bit different for Dick, and then it's a little higher key than he normally shoots. He likes to shoot fairly low key, but
yeah, I think the Prince of Darkness might be the right title for me.
Well, so, but the curves and straight lines, I could easily see this picture with some ad copy added onto it down in the black area, so, or even in that hat band. So.
Yes, drink and drive responsibly, I think. Yeah, I have a plethora of empty whiskey bottles. That might say something too. Okay. This is a picture I dearly love. And because the assignment being window light, and one of the things that I think, probably talked too much about was how different a look you can get from window light. And the thing that Dave Hearn has captured here, which to me really lights my fire, is the subtraction of light. David's kitchen has a very, very large softbox built into it. A nice soft window with a window shade that pulls down. Well, that gives you flat, shadowless lighting. And as you can see in the picture, Dave has wonderful shadows defining the shapes of the fruit, edge lighting, all sorts of things. Well, now if you look at his setup, by carefully subtracting light, he has pasted up, I call them gobos, go-betweens, things that keep light off of your subject to give him what he wants, and places to let light sneak through, like the splash of light that's on the base of his picture. Go back to the picture, Dave, for a second, if you would. See that beautiful splash of aqua turquoise that's direct light sneaking in through the bottom, also giving you the rim light on the orange. And yet he's taken a bunch of fill off the apple and off the banana and given us these gorgeous shapes. Just enough detail to the vase to carve it out of the black background. So this to me is a perfect example of seeing light. Dave saw what he wanted to get and then got things in front of the light to make it happen.
But you had a critique.
I did, only because we're friends. Dave and I have a running joke about engineers. And I said, this is not the foundation for a building. Does it have to be centered? And by moving it in a little bit and giving what portrait photographers call looking space, where you give the eyes or the nose a little more distance to look off frame, to me, makes it more pleasant. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It just means it's something I prefer. And I asked Dave about it, and he was willing to make the change and do it. And the jury's out as to what works. But I really, really think it's a fantastic picture. And again, not just seeing light, but imagining what I call what if light. What if I block this off? What if I got something in the way of that? And with enough masking tape and pieces of paper, Dave was able to achieve that. And for those of you that haven't tried that yet, it's fun.
So I'm going to stop the share now. I think that those were the pictures we wanted to share with everybody. Okay. Right quickly talk about the assignment for next time. I was mentioning to Dick, I went and counted on Flickr the number of pictures that have been submitted since last time, and added to that the number of pictures people send in by email, and it's approaching 180 pictures. So we have a lot of volume. When I put out this slideshow, it's going to be about 80 or 81 photos, so obviously we're not including all the pictures that got submitted. But Dick and I think both feel that it's not just volume. We want more participation. There's probably, I don't know, I think there's probably 10 or 12 people that we represented today. We'd like to represent more people. So it's not just a matter of and we love the pictures, and the idea behind getting more people on Flickr is for a lot of folks to be able to see the pictures that we're not zeroing in on. So Dick, you want to make a couple of comments on that?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It would be, we're not trying to say cut down on your volume, but Dave is going to come up with an assignment, I think, that will not limit people or exclude your thinking as to, like, I don't care to do that, or that's not my style, so that everybody can get something up there. The reason we're pushing to get on the Flickr page is I think there's a lot of learning opportunities in looking at each other's pictures. Something I'd done the other day, Dave said he liked that, and I said, well, yeah, but I got that in one of your lectures last year. It was a landscape lecture, but I think I took it over to a still life because the principle's the same. And I think the more stuff we see of other people, the more we learn. I mean, I learned a lot looking at Sam Maynard's first sequence, a totally different mindset when you're working a subject. So I think it's a value, and I hope that others will too.
Yeah, I guess which will lead me to sum up what the assignment's going to be. It's going to be encourage as many people as we can to submit pictures this time, but exercise your own creativity. Not going to give you a specific assignment this time, other than we want you to kind of let loose the creativity that you have, what you like to do, either learn a new technique or go back to what you love doing. So, if it's like a Tosha who's known for reflections, if she wants to return back to do some reflections and different pictures, that would be great. We just, and of course, Tosha does.
Well, Tosha could gravitate from spritz bottles to hand sanitizer.
Well, that's true. I do have a picture on Flickr page of that. Some of you may want to go see of a dripping liquid soap dispenser and an almost out piece of roll of toilet paper. So,
which means he's asking for donations.
Yeah. So that kind of concludes episode 4 of the Photo Geezers. We'll have it up here in a couple hours, and we appreciate everybody's participation. Look forward to seeing what comes up the next 2 weeks.
And thank you again. Thanks again for your participation. It's been great.
And yeah, and it's just, Dick and I both get blown away with a lot of the photos that come in and what we're seeing and the growth that people have made in their picture taking. It just, for me, it's very personally rewarding to see what folks are doing and how they're taking new skills and pushing themselves in different directions. So have a good day.
Have a good day. Thank you all.